Lance Wallnau, and welcome to Firewall. In the recent weeks, we've been talking about what's happening in the world around us, and the storm is taking place. And we've been able to see that the hand of God is at work in a mysterious way. And in fact, he's causing the church to come alive in the storm. I want to introduce you tonight to a very special guest. Will Ford is the Director of Marketplace Leadership at Christ for the Nations International in Dallas, Texas. And he's also the co-founder of a company called DreamStream. And the DreamStream company is part of a vision for reconciliation and healing in America with a remarkable story. Will is going to be sharing out of his book. He's the author of The Dream King. And his story is going to be, I think, transformational for everyone that's listening. Asking him before the program if there's anything going on in the streets and the news in the current cycle that we could talk about tonight, he just casually said, well, yeah, in the news cycle right around the last 24 hours, TMZ has been covering something from Raleigh, North Carolina that involves people that he works with. I want to personally introduce you to Will Ford and tell you this is somebody who lives the message. Will, you've got to tell us what's going on with the TMZ report and what's your discovery about the body of Christ during this hour of crises in Raleigh?
Well, what I'm finding out, Lance, right now, what's happening with the body of Christ is we're responding. We're going right into the middle of the crisis. And I love what the Chinese say, you know, the Mandarin Chinese, they don't have an English word for crisis. So they put two words together to make up the word crisis. One word in Mandarin Chinese means danger. The other one means opportunity. And the thing is, this has been an amazing opportunity for the church. And I have friends I've been running with for a good 10, 15 years who are doing amazing things. Daniel Chalmers and his wife, Shara Pradhan, there in Raleigh, North Carolina, along with a good friend and her husband, Faith Wakoma, Pastor Faith, there in Raleigh, North Carolina, had a spontaneous foot washing that happened between them and the police officers of Raleigh, North Carolina. And TMZ picked this up, and stories going viral. But the interesting thing right now is this pushback, it seems to be, from some folks about the power of forgiveness and releasing right now. It's interesting how that's taking place.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about that. And everything indeed that we've been talking about tonight has been so intriguing because I was working the last 2 weeks on a verse from 2 Corinthians, which is where Paul says that he was exercising forgiveness on a situation in Corinth. And he said this, I've forgiven for your sakes in the presence of Christ, lest Satan should take advantage of us, for we're not ignorant of his devices. And we were talking about that word for taking advantage and devices means that there are powerful, profound principalities that work to create and generate strife and division, and that forgiveness is a prerequisite to dismantling what hell is up to. So what are you finding out about forgiveness? What is it about forgiveness that's so provocative?
Forgiveness releases you into your destiny. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. I remember 2003, 2004, I was going to do a service at Dr. King's old church, Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. My friend Lou Engle and I were together.
And where is that located?
That's in Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay.
Yep. And so, but the night before I go there, I had a dream about the dream of Dr. King. In the dream, we're on our way to Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, his old church, but we couldn't get there without first picking up Dr. King. So we go by this old house, and it's a dream. So Dr. King, he comes out, he's alive, but in the dream, he has this enormous white duffel bag with black handles on it. And then the dream, he starts emptying all this dark garbage out of that duffel bag. Then he comes to get into this vehicle with us. And then the dream, I thought to myself, that bag would make a nice souvenir. I'm thinking, I went to Morehouse College. He went to Morehouse College. The bag would make a nice souvenir. But before I could touch it, in the dream, Dr. King grabs me by my shoulders and he says, no, do not go back and pick that up. And then he starts telling me what I need to do to heal the race issue in this nation. I woke up from the dream in tears. I didn't even realize that I've been weeping in intercession the whole night. My pillow was soaked with tears. Shared it with my friend Lou Engle. He begins to weep. And we're crying out to God, God, what is the interpretation for this dream? I said, God, remind me, what did Dr. King say to me? And the Lord said to me, William, the white bag with the black handles, that would be the interpretation for your dream. And so I knew what God was talking about. The black handles represented how I, as an African-American man, a black man, have been handling my white baggage. God was saying to me, William, get rid of your white baggage. You've been carrying it for way too long. And I had one or two incidents with police officers in my past where I remember my first nice the neighborhood I moved into in the suburbs, and the same police officer for the first 3 months will pull me over just for driving while black. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to be chased by a carload full of white guys who were joyriding when I was 13 years old. And they called me the N-word and said they were going to shoot me. But you know what I did?
Where was this, by the way?
This was this was in Texas. Wow. Yeah, in this area. But the deal is this. What I had done for every police officer, every white person in that region, I put those storylines on everybody. It's the Revelation 12, where it says the devil is the accuser of the brethren. The word accuser is a powerful word. It comes from the Greek word kategoros. That's where we get the word category. In other words, the diabolical plot of the enemy is to get us to categorize and stereotype each other so that before we can ever have one conversation with anybody, we place some bad narrative or some bad storyline on them. So God was telling me, William, get rid of your bitterness, get rid of your unforgiveness, get rid of any guilt manipulation, get rid of your white baggage so we can all get a new vehicle that can bring revival and justice for everybody.
So we were talking about the power of stories, because the story that you rehearse or the story that you're told from someone else actually starts to shape the narrative. And that word narrative is like a major, powerful word that's used politically. That's why the media is so dangerous, because they say, if you ever see these segments where they all say the same thing, the same thing, the same thing, the same thing, you're saying, obviously that's not spontaneous, but narrative can get into people. But there's also redemptive narratives, aren't there?
There's totally redemptive narratives. One in my own family, we have a 200-year-old kettle pot that's been passed down because of how the slaves used it in my family. They used it for cooking, but secretly it was used in their prayer meetings to muffle their voices. So I've been taking that pot around the country to talk about.
So people that don't know the story, I promise you there are people that don't. So in your family, there was a kettle pot, and it would be supposedly used for like cooking or something like that.
Right.
But in fact, they were muffling their voices.
Muffling their voices in prayer, because on that particular plantation, they wanted them to be Christians, but they didn't want them to pray because they knew that prayer would foster hope. If they got hopeful, they felt like they would try to run away. So they would literally be beaten if they were caught praying. But in spite of the danger and because of their love for Jesus, they prayed anyway. And so I take that pot around with me to talk about Revelation 5 and 8, the bowls in heaven full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And how it wasn't just the prayers of black Christian slaves, but also white Christian abolitionists. It was the prayers of that group of people that prayed into being the first and the second great awakening. Had it not been for those revivals, slavery wouldn't have ended. And then we had marketplace believers like the Timkeys and others that got into the marketplace of ideas, and they changed the way people thought. People like Harriet Beecher Stowe writes a little book that becomes the theater in everybody's mind. Uncle Tom's Cabin changes the way everybody thinks about slaves, so much so that when Abraham Lincoln met her, he said, so this is the little woman who began the big war. So in other words, it was those group of people that changed the way people thought about this issue, so much so that people in the North were willing to fight for people in the South that did not look like them, because revival and Reformation, they ran together. All that to say, I've been taking that pot around the country. I had the dream about Dr. King. My friend Lou Engle says, hey, share that dream at the Lincoln Memorial. It'll be MLK Celebration Day. We have a prayer meeting. There was a white guy, a friend named Matt Lockett. We weren't friends then, but Matt has a dream about Lou Engle. Never met him before. And types his name in this newly invented thing called Google at the top. Up pops the face of the man he saw in his dream. He freaks out. He comes to that prayer meeting. We've been friends for about 16 years. Well, fast forward. That white friend of mine, Matt Lockett, found out about 5 years ago that the Civil War ended in his family's front yard. So we thought, what a cool coincidence. I have this kettle pot where slaves pray for freedom. You have this house where General Lee fought his last battle. But Lance, we stumbled on more research, and we learned that it was his family who owned my family where that kettle pot came from.
Well, it was his family that owned your family?
Yes.
Where the kettle pot came from?
Yep, and we met at the Lincoln Memorial, both led by dreams, to the place where Dr. King said, I have a dream that one day the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit together at the table of brothers.
And that's the fellow that is a co-author with you, Matt Lockett.
Yes.
And that's the co-founder of the Dream Stream Company.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Tell me a story out of this.
Oh, wow. Well, that one in particular is pretty powerful. But another thing that's really amazing about this story, Matt had family members that owned slaves, but he also finds out a year and a half later, after we're into the story, he just randomly picks up a book about the Methodist Circuit Riders, and he finds a man named Daniel Lockett. Daniel Lockett was a circuit rider that was part of Asbury's company. And here's the interesting thing about the circuit riders. You could not be one and own slaves at the same time. And they carried a couple of things in their satchel, a Bible and a manumission book. The manumission book was so that if they preached the gospel and a slave owner was there, they would slide the manumission book over to him and said, it was for freedom that Christ set us all free, therefore go ahead and set your slaves free. Well, we know that's exactly what happened because everywhere the circuit riders went, the free slave population grew exponentially. In other words, revival and reformation went together. We'll call that today like the breaker anointing, right? Right. But so in all of our stories, all of our families, we have these dominated narratives or storylines. I call it generational blessings and generational curses. Matt had them in his family. I have it in mine. But what God is shouting to America right now is this. What storyline do we want to be a part of? The healing or the hurt, the blessing or the curse? What storyline are we going to be a part of?
Wow. What story? I'll tell you, that is profound because 2020 is going to be the authorizing of a story.
Yes.
And either it's going to be a story of further disintegration and anger, or it's going to be a story of restoration and recovery. And I think the church has the responsibility of leading that story. I'm curious about the issue of prejudice because I can remember it was Bishop Joseph Garlington years ago.
I love him.
From Pittsburgh, who he had told me a sermon he had done, and it was the pride. It was all words that rhymed together. It was the pride of race, the pride of grace, the pride of face, and the pride of place.
Wow.
And he said how those are all used in order to divide up people. Yeah. But you've had experiences with division, and it's, to my surprise, not being discussed. And that is, it's not just black and white.
No.
There are other people suffering right now.
It's interesting, when this whole thing hit with the coronavirus, people ask me, when the racial tension for 2020, when did it start? I would say this started with the coronavirus. The reason why I say that is because right around the time that it started rolling in, late November, early December, we were seeing antisemitism in America go to a whole nother level. And I've been working closely with the Jewish community, honestly, and trying to work through some of those things.
This is important, and
it is.
Because there's so much going on. Anti-Semitism was already on the rise.
Already on the rise.
Pre-coronavirus.
Pre-coronavirus, around the time of Hanukkah, a man who was influenced by a cult called the Hebrew Israelites.
Yep.
Goes into the home of a Jewish rabbi in the middle of Hanukkah and takes a machete and hacks him.
And that was in New York.
That was in New York, and eventually he dies. There were 2 other attacks like that. And so I've been spending time with Orthodox and Messianic Jewish brothers, talking through those things, praying through those issues together. But then once we got into the time of quarantine, before quarantine, with the Wuhan coronavirus coming in, unfortunately, there were some people who started treating treating Asians as if their ethnicity was a virus. And people were blaming them for bringing the coronavirus into America. Asian Americans under attack verbally and physically. In, I think it's Odessa, Texas, there was a white man took a knife to a family of 3 Asians and cut the head of a little boy. I mean, it's a horrible gash, got pictures of it. Attacked him because he was mad at them for bringing the coronavirus in. He didn't even know him. People just being fueled by demons in this thing, right? But then also, too, there was a video that I saw from San Francisco where an older Asian man was being attacked by a gang of inner city kids, and they were pointing fingers, making fun of him because he was Asian, and the whole thing with the coronavirus. But here's the thing, all these attacks coming across the country of the Asians who are talking about this, they say 70% of those attacks are coming from people who look like me in the African-American community. So what we're seeing right now is the enemy is trying to bring this whole thing of nation rising against nation. You know that word nation, there's the word ethnos. It's ethnicity rising against ethnicity right now. And so he's trying to fuel this whole thing right now. So it's not just black and white. It's not even just black and blue. If you think of the police officers, it is this tension where the enemy is trying to expose To the great degree, the social distance that's already been there in our hearts, he's exacerbating the pain of that to try to bring greater division.
And you said earlier, the accuser of the brethren, he categorizes and is putting people in categories. Yeah. And so we have nation against nation, but then it's kingdom against kingdom, because really there's a spiritual alignment also.
Yep.
It seems like this is a great opportunity for the real message of the gospel to go forth, because Jesus took Jew and Gentile in his own body and reconciled them. He dies at the hand of the Romans, so it's the oppressing army, and yet the people that set him up were his own people, the Jews. Right. And somehow he's the intersection of taking all that voltage on himself like a lightning rod, right, and dying with it so that the curse can be broken. Yeah. And so what's the first step for someone to take in terms of undoing the virus of rage, racism, and prejudice in their own bloodline, their own life?
First, I believe it's this whole thing, we have to forgive. Forgiveness is key, and forgiveness can be such an intense process. Jesus said do it 70 times 7. In other words, it's a continual thing. The second thing we need to do is become part of the healing storyline. Jesus himself, he experienced racism. There was a time we wanted to go through a Samaritan village, and the Samaritans and the Jews were very vehemently against each other, both, of course, according to religion, but also ethnically. There was a race thing going on there. So Jesus wants to cut through this neighborhood. I don't know if you experienced this when I was growing up in Fort Worth, Texas. There are certain neighborhoods I couldn't cut through. Some were gang-related, and the folks looked like me, but there were like the Latino neighborhood I couldn't cut through, or whatever. So what I'm saying is this: Jesus couldn't cut through this neighborhood because he was a Jew. And so the disciples who had just seen him from the Mount of Transfiguration, they're thinking, we got all this power now, we're going to address this issue, because they were upset about the racism. So they said, since they wouldn't let you cut through that, Jesus, you want us to call down fire from heaven and just nuke this place and destroy it? And Jesus said, the Son of Man didn't come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. But then he said something else that was so powerful, Lance. He said, you don't know what spirit you're speaking from. In other words, you think you want justice, but you don't know what spirit you're speaking from. Really, you want revenge. And that's what we've been seeing a lot of. The fires that have been released across the country, it's not been about justice. It's been about a revenge. And the vengeance belongs to the Lord. And the anger of man never achieves the righteousness of God. So now we have 8 police officers dead. We have 79 Asian shop owners around the country whose businesses are destroyed and demolished. And we don't know what spirit we're speaking from. But the thing that's interesting about Jesus, he takes control of the narrative. Everybody's favorite new word now, narrative. Here's what he does. Next chapter, he gives the 72 authority to cast out demons. And they come back and report to him what's going on. He says, hey, I saw Satan fall like lightning. So something has shifted in the regions, in the heavenlies. And then a lawyer comes to him. He says, so who is my neighbor? And Jesus says, oh, let me tell you the story about a good Samaritan. It's like, hold up, Jesus, aren't you the same Jesus that just experienced racism from these Samaritans over here? No, Jesus is like this. He takes a sword to the heavens, and he brings a towel to the earth, and he wars against this thing, both supernaturally and also practically by doing this. He says, while the heavens are opened up, I'm going to destigmatize the very people. I'm going to uncategorize the people that you have stigmatized. And I'm going to tell you a story about a good Samaritan. This very same person who experienced racism is now telling the story about a good Samaritan to change the way people think about that people group. That's what we need to do right now. We need to be telling good stories about good police officers. We need to be telling stories about great African Americans that have overcome certain obstacles. We need to be telling good stories about Asians. You get what I'm saying? It's time for the church to take control of the narrative, but we have to war in the heavens first. Yeah. Get breakthrough in the heavens, but then we take a towel to the earth like they did in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we wash their feet. As a matter of fact, here in Dallas, 5 years ago, when the 5 police officers were shot and killed here in Dallas, myself, my wife, my friend Sean Smith, we actually got a chance to wash the feet of the deputy chief of police for Dallas at that time period.
Let me come back to that in a second, because that's a powerful story. I want to go there with you mentally, and we'll be back in a moment with Will Ford. So people are always asking me, when are you on? I just caught you on the other day, or someone sent me something and they were reading it, but how do I get a hold of you? So here's a simple social media formula. If you're in the older demographic, like myself, you might be doing the Facebook. Now, if you're a really hip older person, you could be doing the Instagram, and everybody does podcasts, but I have to tell you the truth, most of them are a younger demographic. And let's see, we have the Facebook, Instagram. Oh, YouTube is universal. Everybody does YouTube. And I encourage you to meet us there in the format that you're the most comfortable with. This month, however, we do have a special promotion that we're doing on lancewallnau.com, because every month I try to find one unique product that I could give away, so check that out. Welcome back. I'm Lance Wallnau, and this is Firewall. And we've been talking to Will Ford, who has a remarkable ministry and a business and an educational, I would say, mission to be able to bring about realistic reconciliation, both in the black and white relationships, but in actually all races. We were talking about what your experience has been really on the front lines of some of these very rough moments. So 2015, we had 5 officers that were shot in Dallas, Texas. And you're here, and so you got kind of called in to do something. So I want to go back to that. Tell me about that experience.
It's an amazing time. Cindy Jacobs calls a prayer meeting at my school, Christ for the Nations. And that year, it was a Reformation Prayer Network meeting, but she said, God's saying we have to deal with the race issue. I'm like, deal with the race issue? But she was definitely hearing God. We wound up having one of the police chiefs for the city of Dallas, who was actually over that, he was actually over the officers, the 5 police officers who were gunned down at a protest. It's a peaceful protest that was put on, but there was this one particular African-American man that didn't think Black Lives Matter was going far enough. So he came down with a gun. He was military trained, and he was trained to be a sniper, and he took out 5 police officers. So Deputy Police Chief Billy Humphrey was the chief that was over those officers. He was there. And we had this amazing time of prayer with him. 1, to let him know how much we value the Dallas Police Department and all police officers. 2, to let him know that we're standing with them, and to pray for the healing of his department, which had been stigmatized because of some other things that had happened that same week across the country with Philando Castile and in Minnesota, and then Alton Sterling there in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. There's always 1 or 2 bad actors, and again, like we were talking before, the accuser, he loves to categorize, doesn't he? He loves to stigmatize people, and they're amazing, amazing police officers. And you can look at the statistics, and people don't like to talk about statistics, but they're real.
Yeah, how else can you evaluate reality unless you got data?
That's right. And so, but again, the narrative that the enemy tries to push with this thing is that they're all out to get us and whatever, just because of the actions of 1 or 2. So yeah, we want to break that in the city of Dallas. So we prayed over our police officers, prayed over him, washed his feet. He in turn actually washed the feet of a friend of mine, Sean Smith. It was a powerful time. What I'm saying is God is moving behind the scenes with changing the narrative, bringing healing, and we're gonna see breakthrough come in a powerful way if we will just keep pressing in.
So, and there are very powerful, high-level forces that are seeking resolution.
Yes.
I mean, we don't have to surrender the national narrative
Exactly.
to the drive-by media and activists. Right. We really probably need to activate the body of Christ to the same level that everybody else is active.
That's a very good way
to put it. We have to raise our voices at the same level of clarity that the media has its own narrative.
Right. I love the way you say that. It's time to deploy the church. I know other people want to deploy the troops, and we probably should in some circumstances, but we're saying let's deploy the church first. We're going to take a sword in the heavens, we're going to take a towel on earth, and we're going to shift this thing.
I love this statement, a sword in the heavens and a towel on earth, and shift this thing. Yeah. Will, if people want to be able to get in touch with you, what do they do? How do they do that?
Well, to find out more about the story, my friend Matt Lockett and I, The Dream King, go to dreamstreamco.com and get the book. And this will equip you for how to navigate healing the racial divide. It's a great conversation starter, but it's going to equip the church right now to be a part of these tough conversations. And Matt and I have walked through that along with our own prophetic swirl with the whole thing. We had to stop it and just say, hold up, your people actually own my people.
I didn't think about that. When you met, you just discovered that, and it was like a...
Well, we knew each other for 10 years. We're doing life together, good friends, yes.
And you didn't know?
We had no idea.
I just thought you met and discovered. Okay.
Yeah, and then after 10 years of friendship, he finds out the Civil War ends in his family's front yard with a cool coincidence. But then the rest of the story, as Paul Harvard used to say, it gets unfolded. And you hear about our journey in there, the conversations that we had, the tough things we had to confront in our own hearts with healing this issue. And, before you can have reconciliation, you need to have conciliation. And we had a conciliatory relationship. But then when we got to this point, there's some things that he had to reconcile in his heart and some things I had to as well. And it was amazing discovery together that we walked through.
Before you can have reconciliation, you have to have conciliation. That is the first time I've heard that statement's probably been used before, but conciliation, so you have to have a degree of relationship in order to go there.
Honestly, Lance, if we had not had 10 years of good friendship before then, I don't know if our relationship would have survived that level of a discovery.
Wow. And you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking that one of the great untold stories in America, and it's too bad we don't know how to tell it, is the degree of love and unity that exists between black folks and white folks in the body of Christ. I recognize that there's divides that are in the extreme, but man, in our stream, we all grew up loving each other and knowing each other and respecting each other. And so I think we need to step out with the story that we've had, because sometimes it's he who tells the better story wins, and you can have one and not be telling it.
And we've been doing life, doing ministry together. And the beautiful thing is, I've been on platforms not because I'm the guy with the kettle pot that does the reconciliation stuff. I was hired at Christ for the Nations because of my passion for the marketplace leadership major and going into every sphere of influence and culture.
That's my dream. We're going to have you back, and I want to thank you for being our special guest on this special episode of Firewall.
It's an honor to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you for watching today's episode of Firewall with Lance Wallnau. For more information about The Dream King by Will Ford and Matt Lockett, visit dreamstreamco.com. For more information, visit lancewallnau.com.